after accidentally stumbling across one of those classic shopping channel waterless wash and wax demos recently. Thought, do you know what? Dry wiping my dirty car down with carnauba-based petroleum distillates might just make for an interesting video. So after a few late night purchases I thought I'd never make, I'm here to put this apparently versatile shopping channel source to the test. Now, while I'm well aware there's plenty of other credible waterless and rinseless wash type products out there, some of which I've touched on myself before, wanted to specifically get to grips with this cheesy shopping channel type stuff here, partly because I thought it'd be funny, but also because it might actually be of interest to some people. So as well as a pack of cheap multicoloured microfibers, I've picked up 2 different bottles of Plonk to put to the test here, with the new M Sport brand having come directly from the shopping channel and the Williams stuff from Amazon. But judging by the identical ingredients and word for word directions listed on both, doubted there was going to be much if anything between them. But regardless, it was my own motor that was to be rubbed up with them, and while it wasn't deeply ingrained with grot, it hadn't been washed for well over a month, so was sporting enough dirt to warrant a clean. And to be fair, this is exactly the type of surface soiling these kinds of products are best suited to dealing with. So that, plus the fact the car was swirly to begin with, meant it was the perfect candidate for a creamy wipe down. Working from top to bottom as I would when performing a normal wet wash, then started my live demo by spraying half of the tinted glass and gloss black vinyl wrapped roof with the M Sport Waterless Wash and Wax, before thoroughly working it over the dry dusty surface with a shopping channel supplied towel until it came up relatively clean. A separate one was then used to buff away the thin layer of waxy residue it left behind, and it made sense to use a different coloured one here to help keep track of things and reduce the chance of cross-contamination. The same was then done for the other side, but with the Williams stuff instead, which as predicted appeared to be identical, but aside from the slightly off-putting Grandad War Wax smell and the bulky 1 litre bottles with cheap swivel triggers which meant I couldn't realistically fire them off single-handedly, both seemed to do an adequate job at quickly cleaning up the surface and leaving a nice slick finish behind. While there's a few drawbacks to using waterless wash products like these, one of the first I encountered was the inability to quickly remove dirt from nooks, crannies and panel gaps, as while you can technically work your towels into them for a more detailed clean, if you're going to go down that route you might as well just properly wet wash in my opinion. So with the straightforward surface swipe and buff type clean these products are intended to provide, you're just going to have to accept that once you're done you'll still likely have some dusty bits on show. I personally quite like the thick, clingy consistency of the shopping channel sauce, as when it's being spread over the surface does give the impression that it's safely encapsulating dirt even if it isn't, whereas some of the arguably more capable yet watery ones don't really feel like they're safely encapsulating dirt even if they are. Still, with its potent hydrocarbon based formula, this stuff can definitely cut through stubborn dirt, including things like bug splatter, as can be seen by the contamination on the towels. And it's for this reason that you should regularly flip and fold them to provide a fresh cleaning and buffing surface for each section. Now, while I'm pretty sure making contact in this fashion is going to inflict marks, I can't really say to what extent, as it depends on a number of different things. However, I will say that there didn't appear to be any more swirls present after use, but that could just be the wax in the product filling out any freshly inflicted marks. But regardless, in my mind, you either accept that cleaning in this manner might likely swirl, or take every precaution you can with a more lengthy and laborious wet wash to try and avoid it. glass cleaning is always a good test for the smearage coefficient of a new product, as it's pretty unforgiving, especially in the direct sun. But after a thorough buff here with just one of the thin little towels I had to hand, the exterior of the glass at least appeared to be as smear-free as it ever has been with any other post-wash spray type product I've used in similar conditions, so couldn't fault it there, but maybe I'm just particularly good at methodically buffing to a smear-free finish, who knows? This stuff can apparently be used on pretty much all exterior surfaces, including plastic trim and tyres, which you'll see in a bit. So wipe some over the faded cowling at the bottom of the windscreen, which not only cleaned but seemed to give it a somewhat restored finish, which I guess was a bit of a bonus. But at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily go out and bag myself a bottle thinking it was going to fully rejuvenate all my faded plastic either. But generally, both seem to be fairly versatile in their exterior application. It was just a ticket on my tinted chav plates, although to be fair they had been thoroughly protected with something a bit more up to date prior to being fitted a few months ago, so there wasn't a great deal for the shopping channel source to do in that respect. And while its thick creamy consistency worked well on the chrome badges, which I'd recommend spending a minute or so working over and buffing off as they're a visible standout feature, it struggled on the surrounding unpainted plastic details, which I generally wouldn't recommend bothering with, as even if applied via a towel would arguably take too much time to properly sort and defeats the object of using a quick clean product like this in my opinion. So would just advise focusing on the main easily accessible bits that can shine, and again accept that certain areas of the car are going to remain a bit soiled. Most of the dirt was lurking towards the bottom of the car, so made sure to be extra liberal with the application of the Waterless Wash and Wax there, as well as giving it some time to soak. But once gently worked over and buffed off, the thick Carnauba gloop left the lower parts looking a whole lot better than they did just a few seconds before. And while I'm sure this kind of gritty contact will have inflicted at least some light marks on the super soft gloss black plastic skirts, you only have to look at them and they swirl, which is something I fully accepted when I fitted them. It was then onto the wheels, which were given a similar douse and soak with each of the products, starting with the M Sport before finishing up with the Williams. Now, evidently, I wasn't going to be able to properly clean in and around my open-ended nuts like I can with a shampoo and soft brush here, and I wasn't about to start reaching beyond the spokes to spread it over the dirtier barrels either, but still, with a few minutes spent on each and a handful of towels, both bottles seemed to do a decent enough job at removing the 6 weeks worth of brake dust from the wheel faces, at least without too much hassle. I also quickly tested it out on the undressed tyre walls, and while it was never going to leave the deep factory sheen a dedicated product would, the rubber certainly didn't look any worse for its waterless wash and wax once it had been thoroughly worked over and lightly buffed off. While I was getting down and dirty with my multicoloured microfibres then, I gave the new poo shoots a quick once over to keep them looking as spick and span as the day I cack-handedly fitted them. Plus the surrounding glossy black plastic needed a bit of dusting too, following all the extreme hybrid diffusing it had to do recently. I just hope it doesn't all burst into flames once it gets up to temperature, as this stuff smells like it could probably power a paraffin lamp. The door shuts were the last part of the car to be given a dedicated going over, as they wouldn't be seeing the residual suds or rinse water they usually do with a traditional wet wash, so liberally sprayed them down, wiped them over and buffed them off to remove any light sand, dirt and dust that had accumulated from me and the dog getting in and out over the past month, and thankfully for the most part they seem to come up just as well as the exterior. Now, before moving on to showing you the final results, and to try and get the best out of the Waterless Wash and Wax, decided to give everywhere a final once-over with some better quality towels pulled from the spares and repairs cupboard. So primed a damp one with a bit of product and methodically worked it over the exterior once more to give a better quality clean and buff, as the cheap towels used previously weren't really up to the job of doing that to detail quality standard. And unsurprisingly, the addition of a few nice towels really helped with residue removal and just made the whole process feel a tad less invasive. So would recommend quality microfibers with waterless products like these only. Once I'd worked my way around the entirety of the CRZ, both on camera and off, and felt it was looking as crispy as it possibly could without the use of water, called it a day as I'd spent a fair few hours on it. And the whole point of products like these is that they're supposed to be quick and easy. So while this one-off shopping channel clean was essentially just a bit of a laugh with my own already swirled 10-year-old car, considering it hadn't been touched in over a month, for the sake of a basic spray, wipe and buff came up pretty well. So well, in fact, that I reckon 99% of people would assume it had been properly wet washed. Now, that being said, these kinds of products still generally don't float my boat, as I prefer the sudsy thrill of an extended wet wash. But if for whatever reason you did fancy giving either of these products a go, then I'd definitely recommend decanting into a smaller, more manageable bottle first with a better quality trigger, and again only using them alongside decent quality towels. A bit of rain a few days later produced some relatively fresh beadage, which is always a welcome sight, even if it does mean dusty water spots later on. And while I don't imagine the protection laid down will last very long, especially on a car that lives outside like this one, these products are intended to be used on a regular basis, so would still likely be durable enough to see it through to its next application. Now, I couldn't wrap things up without first trying the classic sliding bottle trick, which I did on the glass rather than the paintwork here for obvious reasons. But slide it did, so to be fair, in that respect at least, this stuff definitely does what it says on the tin, or telly. So that's all for this instalment. As always, cheers for tuning in, and I'll see you with a worn leather clean and recolour video on the old V40 if all goes to plan next time.